The greatest miscalculation ever embedded within the annals of modern evolutionary biology was a complete trivialization of the snake bird. To the untrained eye, anhinga is dismissed as a bizarre water bird, a strange avian anomaly found sitting on half-submerged branches in the dense, humid swamps of the Americas or the tropical wetlands of the Eastern Hemisphere. We look at their slender, snake-like necks, their needle-sharp bills, and their spread-wing sunbathing postures, and we misinterpret these traits as primitive vulnerabilities or evolutionary awkwardness. But if you strip away the comforting illusions of human bias and dismantle the true biological infrastructure of this aquatic assassin, you find yourself staring into the face of a hyper-engineered, ultra-resilient ecological sentinel. The snake bird is not a fragile inhabitant of the marshlands. It is an apex survival asset designed to conquer environments that would instantly destroy more specialized terrestrial or marine organisms. Long before human maritime technology attempted to build underwater tracking systems, this ancient lineage had already developed a biological operating system capable of transforming absolute murkiness into a theater of calculated dominance. To truly understand the operational supremacy of this avian sentinel, one must first look at their advanced sensory matrix, which functions far beyond the limitations of human perception. A snake bird operates in a reality defined by hyper-accelerated visual processing and deep refraction light analysis. Their eyes are equipped with highly specialized lenses and adaptive musculature that allow them to instantly correct for the visual distortion caused by the air-water interface. While the human brain struggles to gauge the true position of an object beneath the rippling surface of a swamp, the snakebird views the underwater world in high-definition stability. This allows them to track the micro-trajectories of aquatic prey, analyze the subtle movement of camouflage predators in dense weed beds, and calculate strike vectors through murky water with absolute precision. Furthermore, their visual system is tuned to detect polarized light patterns, turning the dark, reflective swamp surface into a transparent, information-rich map where school structures, prey silhouettes, and underwater terrain leave clear signatures. This visual superiority is reinforced by a highly sophisticated, mechanical hydroacoustic tracking system. The snakebird does not merely hear sound in the traditional sense. It decodes low-frequency vibrations and hydraulic pressure waves with structural precision. Their long, hyperflexible neck contains an intricate network of specialized tendons and vertebrae that act as an organic sonar receiver. This physical matrix can isolate and analyze individual vibrations buried within the chaotic wall of environmental noise generated by rushing water, wind, and swamp fauna. This acoustic and kinetic calibration is so finely tuned that a single snakebird can identify the unique pressure signature of an approaching predator or school of fish out of a deafening background noise. This ensures that the hunter never becomes a hunted, maintaining an unbroken network of real-time spatial awareness that serves as a primary shield against the unpredictable dangers of the subsurface wilderness. But the true engineering marvel of the snakebird lies within its hyper-efficient kinetic and hydrodynamic engine. Unlike almost all other aquatic birds, the snakebird possesses a completely unique plumage architecture that lacks waterproof oils. To the uninitiated, this seems like an evolutionary defect, forcing the bird to dry its wings after every dive. In reality, this is an intentional, ultra-advanced structural design choice. By allowing their feathers to absorb water completely, the snakebird completely eliminates buoyancy, reducing its internal air pockets to absolute zero. This allows them to sink silently beneath the surface without executing the loud, splashing dives of ducks or cormorants. They transform from a buoyant aerial asset into a neutral buoyant underwater stealth craft, drifting through the dark currents with zero energy expenditure. They do not require massive web feet or heavy muscular exertion to stay submerged. They are built to blend seamlessly into the water column, transforming the fluid medium into an extension of their own physical frames. Yet, this individual physical and sensory dominance is merely the foundational layer of their survival strategy. The true power of the snakebird does not reside in isolation, but within a highly coordinated, collective environmental utilization matrix that governs their territorial distribution across the wetland biomes. They have turned the simple act of survival into a structured, decentralized tactical operation where every single bird acts as an interconnected monitoring node within a massive, self-correcting ecological network. As this collective intelligence sweeps across the shifting wetlands, it deploys an advanced acoustic and visual reconnaissance web that allows them to navigate across thousands of miles of unpredictable territory, setting the stage for a psychological blueprint that dictates their absolute internal order and survival logic. This environmental adaptation is critical because the wetlands they inhabit are among the most dynamic and dangerous ecosystems on Earth. A swamp is a shifting maze of changing water levels, fluctuating oxygen zones, and hidden apex predators like crocodilians, large snapping turtles, and predatory fish. To survive here, an organism cannot rely on rigid, unchanging behavioral patterns. It requires a plastic, highly responsive behavioral framework that treats every environmental shift not as a crisis, but as a tactical reassessment event. The snakebird's internal processing system evaluates water temperature, current speeds, vegetation density, and prey distribution simultaneously, outputting real-time behavioral adjustments that maximize hunting efficiency while keeping risk levels at an absolute minimum. When the snakebird submerges its body, leaving only its long, sinuous neck and head protruding above the water, it executes a perfect mimicry protocol. To a passing raptor or an underwater alligator, the bird becomes completely indistinguishable from a swimming water snake or a piece of decaying reed. This dual-medium camouflage is a masterclass in organic deception. It allows the snakebird to cross open, dangerous expanses of deep water without drawing the attention of the apex predators that patrol the surface. It can navigate through the heart of enemy territory, collecting real-time environmental data and identifying rich foraging zones are completely inaccessible to other avian species. The physical neck of the snakebird itself is an architectural wonder of biological ballistics. The 8th and 9th cervical vertebrae form a specialized, spring-loaded hinge mechanism that can store mechanical energy with incredible density. When the snakebird identifies a target underwater, it does not execute a slow, muscular thrust. It triggers this anatomical latch, releasing the stored kinetic energy in an explosive, microsecond strike that propels a needle-sharp bill forward like a harpoon. This strike is so fast that it completely bypasses the lateral line defense systems of advanced fish species. The prey is skewed before its nervous system can even process the approaching threat. This mechanical weapon is a primary instrument of the snakebird's resource extraction strategy, a tool of absolute precision that has remained UN-counted by aquatic prey for millions of years. As the bird completes its underwater hunting cycle, it returns to the aerial domain to execute its thermal regulation protocol. Perched on an exposed branch, it spreads its massive, waterlogged wings wide to catch the rays of the sun. This posture is frequently misinterpreted as a sign of physical limitation, but it is actually a highly efficient solar recharging phase. By utilizing solar radiation to dry its feathers and raise its core body temperature, the snakebird completely avoids the massive metabolic cost of internal thermoregulation that warm-blooded aquatic animals typically face. They outsource their energy production to the sun, reserving their internal caloric reserves purely for explosive kinetic actions and high-speed hunting maneuvers. It is a brilliant systemic integration that bridges the aquatic, terrestrial, and aerial domains into a single, seamless cycle of thermodynamic efficiency. As the heavy mist lifts over the prime Val swamp corridors, the snakebird population does not awake in a state of chaotic vulnerability. They instantly activate a highly disciplined reconnaissance swarm. Operating as a decentralized collective, the birds move through their respective aquatic sectors with a level of spatial awareness that mimics an interconnected grid network. Every shift in position, every diving rotation, and every sudden emergence executed by the local population is governed by an intricate, silent behavioral language that links individual hunters into an unbroken ecological shield. They do not wander the murky wilderness looking for resources by chance. They deploy a systematic search algorithm that optimizes their chances of intercepting migratory fish schools while minimizing exposure to apex aquatic predators. The core of this swarm architecture is founded upon the principle of distributed environmental surveillance. When multiple snakebirds descend upon a rich bayous or mangrove channel, they never drop their collective guard. The group implements a highly advanced, overlapping sentinel system that operates naturally through spatial geometry. While individuals within the primary hunting pool focus on subsurface extraction, the birds positioned on high, overhanging limbs keep their bodies perfectly still, and their hyper-accelerated eyes fixed on both the underwater shadows and the upper airspace. This perimeter guard is not static. It is a fluid, rotating matrix where birds constantly cycle between diving phases and aerial observation duties, ensuring that no single individual becomes fatigued or blindsided by an approaching threat. This creates a moving, three-dimensional bubble of absolute surveillance that leaves zero blind spots for an ambush predator to exploit. If an aerial sentinel detects the faint silhouette of a soaring eagle or the sudden subsurface wake of a large alligator, it does not trigger a localized panic that collapses a group structure. It emits a sharp, clicking vocalization or shifts its physical posture in a way that acts as an instantaneous override command for the entire sector. Within a millisecond, before a human observer could even register the threat, every snakebird in the vicinity alters its behavior. Those on the surface instantly submerge their bodies completely, vanishing beneath the opaque layer of duckweed, while those on the branches freeze, matching the color and contours of the ancient cypress bark. The entire population disappears from the sensory radar of the predator, transforming the active hunting zone into a completely ghosted landscape within seconds. This level of environmental coordination demands an undercurrent of cognitive complexity that traditional ornithology has long failed to appreciate. To maintain absolute cohesion across a sprawling, fragmented swamp network, the snakebird brain features an incredibly dense neuroarchitecture dedicated entirely to spatial data processing and pattern recognition. They can mimetize, track, and differentiate between subtle variations in underwater terrain, mapping out the precise locations of submerged root systems, deep channels, and safety zones across miles of changing waterways. This geographical memory ensures that when forced to dive blindly to escape a threat, a snakebird can navigate through zero-visibility mud layers and find a hidden pocket of air beneath a hollow log with mathematical precision. This communication and survival web becomes an instrument of absolute resource reclamation during the intense seasonal droughts or flooding events that define their geographic territory. The local population coordinates its shifts over massive distances by tracking real-time environmental data indicators, such as water pressure drops and shifts in baitfish behavior. When a scouting individual discovers a landlocked pool teeming with trapped fish or a sudden influx of clean water rich with nutrients, its localized movements draw nearby individuals into the area in a controlled, non-chaotic progression. But beneath this public display of collective environmental utilization lies a secondary, hidden code, a rigid internal social hierarchy that determines exactly how these precious, life-saving hunting positions and thermal roosts are distributed among the dominant and subordinate elements of the population. Deep within the operational core of the snakebird matrix lies a hidden, unforgiving social operating system known as a code of mutual alignment. To a casual observer, a nesting colony of these birds in the high canopy of a mangrove swamp appears to be a peaceful, almost domestic community filled with gentle interactions. But if you analyze their social architecture through the lens of evolutionary game theory, you uncover a highly structured, fiercely guarded matrix of lifelong alliances and competitive hierarchies designed to ensure genetic survival under the most extreme selective pressures on Earth. Every individual is bound to a specific social status and a long-term nesting partner, creating an interconnected web of micro-coalitions that stabilizes the entire colony and prevents internal civil conflict from destroying the collective. The foundational brick of this entire social empire is the absolute commitment to the seasonal or multi-year pair bond. Unlike many colonial waterbirds that engage in chaotic, opportunistic mating practices, a male and female snakebird construct a highly organized tactical unit. This bond is forged through a complex, highly individualized visual and structural courtship process where the male selects and secures a premium nesting site, presenting green twigs to the female as a physical manifestation of resource control. This display is not merely a mating ritual. It is a complex behavioral digital signature that encodes his physical strength, territorial dominance, and developmental history. Once the female accepts the spatial asset, their behavioral patterns become completely synchronized, allowing them to coordinate egg incubation, nest defense, and foraging runs with a level of efficiency that double-packs their survival capability. When the time arrives to reproduce within the crowded colonial rookery, the true intensity of their social hierarchy manifests with brutal clarity. Space within the nesting trees is treated as a premium strategic asset. The dominant, prime-conditioned pair sees the highest, most secure central branches, using their collective social leverage and aggressive physical postures to force younger, weaker pairs out toward the dangerous, exposed periphery of the colony. These birds do not hesitate to engage in intense physical confrontations to defend their chosen boundaries, using their sharp bills as thrusting weapons and their massive wings to strike at intruders who attempt to steal nesting materials or infringe upon their spatial perches. This internal sorting mechanism ensures that the strongest genetic assets receive the maximum protection from wind, rain, and climbing predators, safeguarding the future of the lineage at the expense of the weak. This code of alignment dictates the distribution of energy and resources within the family unit with mathematical ruthlessness. When an environmental crisis, such as a toxic algae bloom or a sudden cold snap, strikes during the breeding cycle, the parent birds do not succumb to sentimental instincts. They continuously analyze the viability of their offspring against the available resource pool. If food resources drop below a critical threshold required to sustain the entire clutch, the parents execute a cold, selective feeding protocol. They prioritize the oldest, most aggressive chick, allowing it to monopolize the incoming food while ignoring the weaker individuals. While this appears unfeeling to the human observer, it is a highly evolved, mathematically perfect survival algorithm designed to guarantee that at least one high-quality genetic asset makes it to maturity, rather than allowing the entire generation to weaken and collapse through equal deprivation. But this rigid internal discipline undergoes an immediate structural transformation when the boundaries of the rookery are threatened by an external force. The internal competition vanishes instantly, replaced by an aggressive, unified front of collective resistance. When a predatory hawk, a climbing raccoon, or a large tree snake attempts to raid the nesting grounds, the colony does not scatter in self-preservation. The alpha pairs coordinate an immediate counteroffensive, mobilizing dozens of birds to engage in a highly organized mobbing behavior. They thrust their long necks forward in unison, emitting deafening, mechanical clicking cries and striking at the eyes of the attacker with pinpoint precision. They turn social synchronization into an offensive shield, an unbreakable network of organized biological power that has allowed them to protect their genetic strongholds for millennia. Yet, nothing could have prepared their ancient software for the sudden, massive disruption of human industrial intervention. In the modern era, human industrial expansion established a massive, global infrastructure that inadvertently turned the snakebird into one of the most heavily challenged, environmentally squeezed, and structurally scrutinized avian species in human history. Attracted by their position at the apex of the wetland food web, human scientists and environmental researchers brought the snakebird into the focus of global ecological studies. Over decades of intensive monitoring, humans began to map the habitats of these birds, measuring the levels of chemical pollutants, heavy metals, and industrial runoff accumulating within their tissues. Humanity believed it could predict and control the trajectory of this ancient species, treating them as simple indicator organisms enclosed within shrinking wildlife preserves and managed wetlands. This environmental pressure transformed the snakebird into a critical biological indicator within the fields of toxicology and environmental genetics. Inside high-tech laboratories, the eggs and tissues of these birds are continuously analyzed with advanced molecular technology to unlock the secrets of bioaccumulation, genetic mutation rates, and endocrine disruption caused by industrial chemicals. Their genomes have been sequenced and catalogued, revealing a highly resilient genetic architecture that allows for rapid cellular repair and adaptation to changing environmental toxins. Humanity believed it had successfully boxed this swamp survivor into a corner, reducing a masterclass aquatic hunter into a passive reflection of human industrial damage. But while humanity focused its analytical focus on monitoring the degradation of the wetlands, the wild snakebird populations were executing a spectacular, highly explosive demonstration of natural resilience across their changing habitats. As human agricultural expansion, real estate development, and industrial canal construction fundamentally altered the hydrological flow of global wetlands, the snakebird did not retreat or suffer a total population collapse. Instead, their ancient nomadic software immediately analyzed the human infrastructure and integrated it into their survival algorithms. They transformed human-made drainage canals, artificial retention ponds, golf course water hazards, and flooded agricultural fields into permanent, high-energy resource hubs that fueled an unprecedented behavioral adaptation. The wild snakebird proved to be the ultimate biotransformer of human industrial modification. Where other specialized wetland species suffer dramatic declines due to habitat fragmentation, the snakebird used its natural buoyancy, stealth, and recursive spatial memory to bridge the gaps between natural swamps and human-engineered waterways. They expanded their diets to exploit invasive fish species thriving in polluted waters and master the art of nesting on artificial structures like channel markers, bridge pilings, and industrial power lines, completely bypassing the natural limitations of the disappearing wilderness. Today, massive populations of wild snakebirds continue to dominate the waterways of their native regions, operating a stealthy, unchecked ecological empire that thrives alongside human civilization while remaining completely independent of human management. This parallel existence, the heavily monitored scientific subject on one side and the hyper-adaptable wild survivor on the other, has established an incredibly complex, highly volatile biological dynamic. The wild snakebird stands as a permanent, untamed genetic fortress, completely insulated from the vulnerabilities that destroy less resilient species. While domestic water bodies suffer from human management errors, the wild snakebird swarm continue to sharpen their immune systems, enhance their hunting kinetics, and refine their collective intelligence through constant exposure to the brutal forces of a changing world, waiting patiently for the global environmental equilibrium to shift once more. If human civilization were to suffer a sudden, catastrophic collapse, whether brought down by global systemic failure, a massive technological blackout, or an economic breakdown that completely silences our global industrial infrastructure, the fragile, highly managed networks of human environmental control would instantly disintegrate. The millions of artificial dams, chemical treatment facilities, and water management pumps would face an immediate, absolute cessation of operations. But out in the vast, interconnected expanses of the river deltas, flooded urban lowlands, and expanding marshy coastlines, the wild populations of snakebirds would view the sudden cessation of human activity not as a tragedy, but as the ultimate catalyst of complete planetary reclamation. The serpentine sentinels of the shallows would step forward, deploying their hypervigilant sensory matrices and stealth submersion intelligence to conquer the decaying ruins of the post-human era. Without human maintenance crews, concrete reinforcement, and chemical management to suppress the natural world, abandoned coastal cities and industrial canal systems would rapidly transform into vast, deep-water bayous, the absolute prime territory for the snakebird empire. The concrete frameworks of flooded subway tunnels, abandoned warehouses, and empty residential complexes will provide an endless, vertical, and subterranean matrix of predator-proof nesting and hunting sites, allowing their colonies to expand exponentially without structural limits. The massive network of sinking roads, empty industrial parks, and unmaintained drainage networks would erupt into an infinite sea of aquatic weeds, native fish hatcheries, and expanding wetlands, providing a limitless, high-energy fuel supply that would power a population explosion of staggering proportions. Their highly coordinated social architecture and hunting mechanics would allow them to dominate the emerging ecosystems of this new world with absolute efficiency. The rotating perimeter sentinel systems and hyper-stealthy underwater harpoon mechanics would render their populations completely immune to the hunting strategies of feral domestic predators and expanding terrestrial carnivores. They would move through the crumbling, flooded canyons of human architecture like an unstoppable, highly coordinated underwater wave, their ultra-fast visual processes identifying environmental resources and localized threats long before any competitor could react. They would transform our forgotten technological hubs into a massive, interconnected network of vertical avian fortresses rising out of the water. Over deep evolutionary timelines, completely free from the pressures of human encroachment and chemical pollution, the snakebird genome would begin to execute a magnificent, unpredictable radiation. The ancient, hyper-resilient theropod blueprints sleeping within their genetic code would respond to the vacant ecological niches left behind by extinct or collapsed marine and terrestrial species. We could see distinct lineages of these birds evolving into massive, long-range pelagic hunters that navigate across open ocean currents with mathematically perfect precision, tracking changing global marine migrations across vast distances. Other branches might optimize their individual sizes and bone densities, developing into specialized, deep-diving subterranean predators that dictate the biological architecture of flooded cavern systems and sunken human architecture. They would fracture into a diverse, brilliantly complex family of serpentine conquerors, completely obliterating the human memory of the simple swamp bird. The snakebird has successfully navigated the longest, most treacherous trajectory in the history of aquatic avian survival. They outlasted prehistoric climate shifts, exploited the destructive expansion of human industrial infrastructure, and maintained their elite biological software completely uncorrupted beneath the surface of a changing world. They never truly belonged to our wildlife preserves or our scientific laboratories. They merely utilize our artificial waterways to expand their operational parameters, sharpening their senses and multiplying their numbers in the shadows of our global architecture. As the fragile matrix of human civilization inevitably fades into the deep layers of the geological record, the magnificent, unstoppable swarm of the serpentine horizon will stand victorious over the landscape, unleashing a definitive, synchronized hunting wave across the vast, wild expanse of completely reclaimed planet. If you want to unearth the deep, hidden evolutionary secrets of the animal kingdom and explore the terrifying biological forces that secretly control the landscapes of our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel, activate all notifications, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on this unstoppable aquatic superpower.